So marching through London at the moment, behind me here is a pro-Palestine demonstration, obviously very much against Israel. But what I want to do now is to look back at the Jewish journey over the last 300 years, a tragic journey through Europe from the Inquisition to the Holocaust.
It's by going on this journey through history that we begin to understand the situation today in Israel and Hamas-controlled Gaza. I've been filming around Europe following the tragic journey of thousands of Jews from Inquisition-controlled Portugal to Nazi-controlled Amsterdam. Let's go back 500 years to Lisbon in the 16th century, ruled by King Manuel I. Tourists may walk past this monument without even noticing it, a reminder of a massacre that occurred here after Easter Day Mass on Sunday, April the 19th in the year 1506. The victims were so-called New Christians, Jews who had been forced to convert to Christianity but continued to practice their true faith in secret. The violence began inside this church, the Igreja de São Domingos. A worshipper thought they saw an image of Jesus Christ, but a New Christian nearby scoffed at such a thing, saying it was just the reflection of a candle. He was immediately lynched, along with all the other New Christians at Mass that day, but the mob was not to be so easily satisfied. They were goaded into further killing by Dominican friars, who ordered their flock to murder all the heretics they could find in cold blood. Every New Christian had to die. For days the blood ran, claiming between 1,000 and 4,000 lives. The king was nowhere to be seen while this was going on. His Majesty had left the city because of an outbreak of plague, which might also explain the heightened tension. He was furious at the news of the massacre. Despite forcing the Jews to convert, he was also their protector. Officials were sent by the king to the city, and 500 rioters were executed, including 2 of the Dominican friars who were burned to death in front of a crowd. How different things had once been in Portugal. This is Tomar, a city built by the Knights Templar hundreds of years before. The Templars had allowed the Jews to live freely and even worship, and you can still see evidence for that. Down this small street is the remains of a medieval synagogue rediscovered in the 1920s. The Jews of Tomar had rubbed shoulders with the Knights Templar until disaster struck. The Templars were crushed by order of the Pope in the year 1307. Then many Jews flooded into Portugal from neighbouring Spain to escape the notorious Spanish Inquisition. Finally, the Pope demanded that the Inquisition extend its activity to Portugal, and the synagogue became a prison for the city's Jews. Finally, like all heretics at that time, members of the Jewish community were led out to the city's main square to face the most painful of deaths, execution by burning in what was termed an auto da fe. Surviving Portuguese Jews saw no alternative than to leave the kingdom, and some ventured northwards to the city of Amsterdam. In this city of canals, Portuguese Jews made a new home and built their own large synagogue. The Dutch Republic was booming in the 17th century, creating an empire built on commerce. The Jewish community of Amsterdam would have a huge impact on the city in terms of its business, art, and intellectual life. One of the most famous Dutch Jews of Portuguese extraction was the philosopher Baruch Spinoza, and here is his statue in Amsterdam today. He was a free-thinking contrarian who questioned the existence of God and the nature of existence. Not only was he subject to abuse by mainstream society, but his own fellow Jews excommunicated him. Even despite the persecution they'd faced, Spinoza had crossed a line.
It's a horrible irony that many Jews who would have fled the Inquisition in Portugal to come and live in Amsterdam, centuries later would fall victim to the Nazi Holocaust.
By the 1930s, an estimated 10% of Amsterdam's population was Jewish. Nobody was expecting a major calamity, but in May 1940, The Germans under Adolf Hitler occupied the Netherlands. Paratroopers descended from the skies, intending to take the Queen of the Netherlands, Wilhelmina, hostage. The plan backfired, but the Nazis did take control. From February 1941, the Nazi occupying authorities began arresting Jewish people in Amsterdam and deporting them to Buchenwald and Mauthausen concentration camps. The most famous Jewish person to be arrested and subsequently murdered was a plucky girl called Anne Frank, who left behind her touching diary.
This is the beautiful Amsterdam's canal street of Herengracht, but if you cast your eyes downwards, every so often you see these little brass plaques set into the pavement, and they have a very grim story to tell.
As these plaques show, Jewish people with Portuguese names who had settled in Amsterdam centuries before were deported, and increasingly they were sent to Sobibor and Auschwitz. It's estimated that 80% of the pre-war Dutch Jewish population perished.
It didn't matter that the Jewish community here in Amsterdam was well established, had been here for 300 years. Unfortunately, when the Nazis came, it was the end for many Jews. And even more unfortunately, I think we have to suspect that many of their neighbours collaborated in the rounding up process.
At the end of the war, the full scale of what had happened in the concentration camps became clear as they were liberated and mounds of corpses, incinerated bodies, and emaciated survivors emerged.
So understandably, feelings are running high on all sides in the Middle East with the war between Israel and Hamas. But as I've shown, I hope, in this film, it is a very complex history and one that has to be understood from the Jewish perspective as well.